The problem I have with pop culture is a lot of people look to celebrities as role models, right? And they try to model their behaviors off of them. Meanwhile, there's a whole bunch of work that took place to get to that point where you can live that lifestyle. And it takes work, right? Dedication, discipline. You're trying to get the yachts or the chains and all that stuff, and you don't got it like that. But on top of that, those people are human too. So, and they're just trying to figure out, do the best they can. And if the family structure was right, I think that the chances of your kid looking outside the home for a role model will be decreased in the African American culture. Because, the men that are pushed on us in our culture that look like us are the rappers, the athletes, right? In the movies, they play mostly like, shooting people up, and that's all they see. Representation is important. They don't show the black engineers, right? They show the black football players. The draft is on right now, right? And you see athletes all the time, but there's such a small percentage of people who can make it to that. But everybody can be an engineer. Everybody can be a carpenter. Everybody can be an electrician. I think that needs to be talked about more.
So you feel like, if I'm hearing correctly, that our role models tend to be more people who are celebrities who are in pop culture. You know, I feel like in African culture, that happens to a degree, but the influence of your immediate community is much more felt than what's being shared in the media. I think any teenager would sees like someone who's rich and famous and kind of wants to relate to that, wants to emulate that, but in African culture, at least how I grew up, right? And again, we're just making generalizations. It seemed to me that my role models, or the people that sort of had created structure around me, were the people within my community, and not necessarily even people in my family, right? People who were like, "Yo, don't do that because I know your mom," and sometimes they didn't even have to say it. Like I knew, and in that sense, there's an absence of a role model, but there is a presence of what not to do, and so you just become part of, you just embody the expectations that everybody else sees you as, right? So, for instance, when I was growing up, I told my grand uncle, he would ask you when you were 5, 6, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "I don't know, a doctor." Well, he held me to that, right? He's like, "You're gonna be a doctor." Okay, you're gonna be a doctor. Now, he said, "You're gonna be the first doctor from our village," and blah blah blah, and that puts a little bit of pressure on you, but it's good pressure, because even if you don't become a doctor, right, you become
something.
You become something, right? And so those were the pressures I had constantly. Everybody would ask you, your community would ask you, "Hey, how did you do in school?" They asked about your report card. There are some people I know now that don't even know how their kids did in school. So they want to know, how did you do in school compared to everybody else? What was your position, right? And those are things that, as a kid, when I was growing up, it was always in the back of my mind what the expectation was. So I don't remember a true role model, but I do remember like feeling that kind of pressure growing up. And is it bad pressure? I don't know, but it's just the kind of pressure that you feel as a child in the African culture that I grew up in.
And they say it takes a village to raise a child, right? But my dad, he used to talk about when he was growing up that he felt that community presence, that like, I'm gonna tell your mom, I'm gonna tell your dad, or they would get disciplined by people in the community if they were caught acting out. And he grew up in the 60s, and now there's not that connectedness in the communities. I don't think. I think I know a lot of people that if someone outside of them discipline their child, it would be an issue. And I don't know how we got to this point in the black community, but there's a lot of stuff that was going on in the 60s that you could say was good for the black culture, right? We stuck together with certain movements and things like that we were a part of, that it's not, we don't have that unity, at least from my perspective, right? I can't speak on everything, but I don't think that we stick together as much as we did back then. And of course we had to, right, because of the things that were going on, the Jim Crow South and the stuff that was going on with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, of course. Back then, times were different back then. But again, like you said, those were role models. Those were people who they looked up to as someone that looked like them, and all right, I can make this impact in my community.
Yeah. I have to say, probably one person I can think of that would be seen as a role model for anyone that is black, especially any man that is black, is Barack Obama. We had, like you said, Martin Luther King and all that, and Mandela, and there were African heroes and there were African American heroes in the movement to sort of establish the black man as a force in the world. But I think maybe it was a combination of media presence and charisma and the time that it happened, right, where the magnitude of Barack Obama being the president of the United States, I think maybe the magnitude of it was one that, like, every African that I know, right, yeah, I'm sure there are exceptions, and every African American that I know was proud and felt that is right there the pinnacle of what we can be, right, as a black man. That is what I can be, because he carries himself with such I guess courage and defiance and strength, right? He's kind of unapologetic even in his posture, right? He's like, he's not like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm here. He's comfortable in his environment and he's laughing. I feel like that perhaps was a role model that I looked at, and probably generations after me, and whether you're African or African Americans would look at as a strong role model.
Of course, I mean, he was the first black president, right? Yeah. And him the way he carried himself, very well spoken. Like you said, the charisma, his public speaking, like, he was great. Obama the person, right? And politics aside, of course, that would be someone you could model your behavior off of. And I think that I like that one more than I like the ones that are getting chosen now, though, right? Because you had said like, teenagers would get influenced by the guy that's doing the cool stuff, but I it's not teenagers that I see that are getting influenced by these rappers or entertainers. These are adults.
Yeesh.
And that's where it's like, how deep does it go? Because there are people out there that are modeling their behavior after single individuals and they're married, or rich individuals and are broke, and it just puts them in a situation, if you look at the big picture, that's not aligned with their goals, or at least the commitments that they made. And of course, I expect it to happen with kids, and I don't expect it to happen with adults.
Would you? Why? I guess we all have role models throughout our lives. Why do you think that's the case with adults, though? For typically, I like to think adults have established who they're going to be and how they're going to act in the world, right?
By when?
I don't know. I would say probably like your mid-20s, 30s maybe. At minimum 30s, like, you should know, hey, this is who I want to be in the world, right? And if you don't know, I think it means there's a larger issue around the people the people you're around are not helping you sort of navigate that, right? Because role models are for kids. Role models are, if you ask me, role models are, hey, here's the path to take to become this person, right? And then on your way to that path, you should know very clearly, oh yeah, I have examples of that in my life. I've already, checked certain boxes. I've already met certain requirements, and I know I am on that path. But if you're still lost in your 30s or late 20s, I think you're still lacking a role model. So if we're looking at if individuals are looking at, like, I don't know, rappers or whatever as role models, and you're in your 20s, 30s, I would think you probably
this isn't a lot of people, right?
Yeah,
this isn't a lot of people.
Yeah.
But they're out there. I've encountered some, and I was like, whoa. But there's reasons behind it. People are so layered, right? And we all got that inner child. There's something there that, whether it's insecurities or something like that, they haven't been able to distance themselves from it. But that's something I see in the culture.
Yeah.
That's something I see in African American culture.
What are the positives with that, though? Are there positives with? Yeah, you had mentioned earlier about, like, hey, listen, don't hit my kid. This is my kid, right? Being more possessive about raising your child. Are there positives to it that allows that African American community to sort of sustain that means of raising the child?
I think now, with the times that we're in now, that individual that's trying to discipline your child might not have their best interests at heart. Their intentions might not be to make that child better through this interaction. It might literally be, I'm pissed off about something and I'm going to take my anger out on the first person I get an opportunity to do that on. And it just happens to be your child. You know what I mean? So the positive is you're protecting your kid from a traumatic experience. But there's a line, right? And as a parent, especially as men, right, we want to protect our family and we want to provide for our family. But I also want my child to be able to take criticism if it's aimed in the right direction. And, we all get corrected or run into a certain level of criticism as we grow older. But some kids, like some people, they can't see how it's their fault, right? And I think that when you grow up in a bubble and you're protected and you're sheltered and no one can tell you that you did wrong, your parents, some parents, they love their kids so much they put them on a pedestal so they don't bust that bubble. And if it doesn't happen young, right, then you get a adult that has no level of accountability. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's a positive thing, because what you said, I remember being disciplined by teachers, right, as a child, that they would hit us so hard, and I'm like, why are you hitting me this hard for something as stupid as, like, I showed up late to school, or like, my I had a stain on my uniform or something, right? And it's like you're taking out something else on me, right? You're taking this out on me for about something else, and it's you're right that you have to sort of protect your child in a way, especially in certain environments, right? I watched that movie about the Williams sisters, that King Richard movie.
Mm-hmm.
And, Richard Williams, he had to protect his kids from the community, because the community, by and large, were going to be a negative influence and negatively impact the kids. So yeah, he had to step in, and it's unfortunate that has to happen sometimes. But I would think that as the African culture can sort of adopt that, like we need to sometimes be able to say, hey, not every adult in this community has your children's best interests in mind, right? And so there are times where you need to step in and be like, nah, stay away from that. but ultimately, when you think of the wisdom of the crowd, like most people within the community that I grew up in wanted to see me succeed.
And I think that's a big difference in Eastern civilization versus Western civilization, because it's more like individualized, right? And people are more like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm only worried about my corner of the earth. And I'm sure you heard of the crab in a barrel or crab in a basket metaphor. And I see that. Which is why we feel like we gotta protect our kids from certain interactions. But I think that, like you said, your culture could learn from that and probably protect more. I think that if we created a pocket of or scratch that, if we surround ourselves with like-minded individuals and then kind of select certain individuals to be around your kids, those people could also chime in and discipline our child if need be.
But you have to create that community.
Yeah, you got to create that.
Are we creating that? You feel like, are you think in African American community that we're creating the community that you feel like? Are we on our way to that?
I don't even know if that's one of the goals. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I know that I try to surround myself and my family with like-minded individuals, and most of them are parents, right? And I trust them. So I know, like, if something was to jump off, like, first off, if they met my child, I trust them, right? They wouldn't be. I know they wouldn't come with that type of energy towards a child.
Yeah.
So in my immediate circle, yeah, that would be something that's okay.